Hello, good evening, Cinema Satsang viewers and everybody. And today we have the fantastic writer Pubali Chaudhuri with us. Super talented and fantastic writer of films like Rock On and I Poche, both very good Hindi films. You wrote
Yes.
about male bonding not just in one film, even in Kai Poche. So you are an expert in male bonding, it seems. Male characters and
From my young days, I've had a bunch of boys as my friends, and they always come in a group of 3 or 4. Even as a teenager, I would be dating someone in my neighborhood, and he would have 2, 3 of his best buddies. And generally, I've hung out with always a set of boys. So I think, you just draw things in your life that kind of you have an experience of. As a writer, I think maybe you're drawn towards things that you also know intimately. And the way young men, the way they bond, that's also very close to me. I've seen men really have a good time, chill out, tease each other, make off-color jokes. And I've also been one of the boys, so I've hopefully seen men in their elements without them trying to be very proper because there's a girl around. And and it's all paid off. That's why hopefully I can write authentic male characters, because I see them without them trying to put their best foot forward, which is what happens when you're friends, right? Only put your best foot forward only when you're trying to date. Otherwise, when you're buddies, you're just casual, you're yourself. And I have had enough men friends to know male characters.
That comes out very well in Kai Poche and all the three, and especially Sushant's and Amit Saad's bonding, and
right.
Really very...
Which is borderline homoerotic, right? No, I mean just subliminally. I don't mean that they are a gay couple.
Yeah.
But at the emotional core of that story, it was Ishan was so close, or Omi was such a blind fan of Ishan, and they were so tight. And then when the young kid comes along, it almost becomes like a love triangle. Not in a very literal way, but like the emotions are pulled in these directions. So Omi begins to feel left out. There is a sense of jealousy that he actually feels, because now my best friend has someone else to devote his time to. And that young kid is his focus of his energy. He no longer has the time to fool around that much with me, to go watch a movie with me. And that's just lightly indicated. I don't think we really make a huge scene out of it, but I was very aware as the writer that that's my emotional triangle. That's what's happening. Omi is beginning to feel left out, and that's why then that translates into a sense of othering. Who is this boy? From which community is he? He's the one who may not be doing, you just start finding problems with someone who's taken away your best friend. Yeah.
Very interesting insight you gave us right now as a writer, that we as a viewer also, we might not, this is actually the writing process, how the writer writes, and you had a love triangle. It's very interesting. Now that you say it, it becomes more clear. And of course,
there were like light indications of that, like right before interval in the kite flying, the Sankranti festival, and Ahmedabad does a lot of this kite flying. And just a simple thing like that, like Ishan is with Ali. Ali is handling, they are a team, and Omi is on the other team. And so they're competing, right? So when Ishan takes down Omi's kite and he goes like Kai Poche and does a high five with the young kid, those are like really small indications, but I knew that those were the ripples. And often in writing, you hope that what you have in mind will be communicated somewhere, in subtextually.
That is very unconscious.
So much in like,
that is very unconscious. Which is a great thing. That all this affected us unconscious.
Right.
Not very consciously. Okay, कि हाँ ऐसा love triangle चल रहा है.
No, and there's no any dramatic scene where Omi will come directly and say, why are you spending so much time with Ali instead of me? He can't say that. Nobody actually addresses their real concerns. Most humans, anyway, we live in denial of what is really troubling us, right? And we kind of present it in some other way, or we find other faults to address what is our original grievance. So like you're saying, those are part of my processes to figure out the emotional core of the story.
Of course, their relationship was also very physical, and which you mentioned.
Yeah, which is a peculiarly Indian thing. I'm told Westerners get really surprised by seeing how Indian men, when we see it all the time, we see two young boys holding hands and walking, right? And that's somehow very acceptable in an Indian society, but the West really demarcates that as a gay behavior. Or
maybe in the West, the female are freely allowed to bond like this, and in India, it's more
maybe because there's notions, right? Because there are these notions of masculinity which both the cultures suffer, and as much as feminism is a worthy cause, and it's something, it's lived in reality for most of us women. I think men also have a lot of emotional challenges, and they don't even have the comfort of being a cause as yet, thanks to patriarchy. I think one of the victims of men are actually men themselves. Like, they can hardly express their vulnerabilities, they can hardly express their trauma because of the pressure of appearing strong and always not showing any cracks, and I think in real life men suffer this a lot, a certain disconnect from their emotional selves. Anyway, I'm rambling. Let's come back to the film.
So this is an adaptation. From a book by very popular writer Chetan Bhagat, right? So tell us about the process of adaptation, and this adaptation, and a general process of adaptation for writers and writing.
मास्टर क्लास करना पड़ेगा. इंटरव्यू में नहीं होगा, entire process of adaptation. उसके लिए master class कर लो. I think Kai Poche really pushed my learning curve. As in, when I first approached the book, and Chetan is a very popular writer, he writes in a very easy style. It almost feels like he writes to be adapted for Bombay Bollywood films. So I took it on as an easy task. I have to say, I was vain enough to think that this is meant for a film. 3 friends, cricket, and jealousy and riots, and it has all the masalas. I could not come up with such a masala story left to myself. So isko screenplay karne mein itna kya mushkil ho sakta hai? And serves me right that we struggle so much with that script. Because I'm a literature graduate, so if you'd given me a book of Tagore or whatever, Milan Kundera or Garcia Marquez, I would be like, oh, these are literary greats, and I would be very daunted, because Chetan is a contemporary writer, a colleague of sorts, and is a popular writer. I have to say, I walked into the project feeling, ये तो क्या है, कर देंगे ऐसे, तो हिंदी फिल्मी स्टोरी है. And it really came to bite me in the ass, because the nature of narration in literature, in print, and in films are just different. We changed a lot. If you know, some of your audiences may know, Kai Poche is based on 3 Mistakes of My Life, which is a first-person narrative from Govind, that is Rajkumar's character. The book begins with Govind's character, and it's a first-person narrative. Yes, but so there was immediate choices that we were making. We were not doing the story from Govind's first point of view. I was going for a more omniscient narration. We changed the climax. The book climax was Omi coming in at the last minute. It's the riot. It's the same thing. It's the riot and the attack on Ali's house and on Ali. And Ishan is having a face-off with the Mamaji character. And Omi intervenes in the last minute, and Omi sacrifices himself, and Ishan and Ali both get out unscathed. So these were two major changes right off the bat that we had decided on. Number one, that we were not telling the story from Govind's point of view. Number two, changing the climax meant changing everything about the friendship dynamics, right? So Omi was always that blind follower of Ishan in the book, remains a follower, and he ends up killing himself to save his friend and his friend's protege. But by making the difference that we made, which complicated the narrative so much that we had three protagonists, and in climax, we were going to take one of my protagonists onto the other side. Omi was, it's going to be a fight between friends, right? So when we do heroes and villains, it's that much easier if you know this is the bad guy, this is the good guy, I'm rooting for the good guy, right? Which is more or less how Chetan's novel was, right? Because all the three friends were on one side, and Mamaji and the writers were on the
You've
other
completely
side.
changed it, like completely paradigm shift ho gaya.
Right. And so when you say, even if it's a thought, climax mein aise karte hai, but to make that work, that means everything leading up to that climax needs to change. That is why I mentioned the love triangle. So then I really had to dig really deep to find out what would make Omi desert his friends, go on to the other side, and, you know, almost like act like a bloodhound, right? And that emotional journey, apart from any political references, that emotional journey is what was essential for the story. So yeah, adaptation, I think it's a very interesting thing, that the source material has a certain spirit and you need to retain that. That is why you've chosen the book. I mean, in this case, the director chose the book. But since I'd agreed to do it, there was something about the original source material that I have to retain. And that was a certain tale of friendship, a certain tale of secularism, surviving, all of that. Those were the thematics. But I think the way we built characters, the way we arrived at the same messaging was sufficiently different. But a lot of the plot incidents are from the book. Yeah. But still, just structuring it into a 2-hour narrative or 2 hour, 10 minutes narrative, it's a tricky business. There's a lot that we let go from the book, what we thought we'd have, and it was not just overnight decisions. We'd keep sections of the book, then we'd again take it out, then we'd again restructure it. So Kai Poche was certainly a harder script to write than Rock On, undoubtedly. And I hadn't expected it.
How long did it take you to write?
I kind of don't remember now exactly, but Kai Poche was in scripting for a while. I know we had easily more than a dozen drafts of screenplay, surely. And by the time dialogue started happening, we may have had a total of, I don't know, 20 drafts, 18, 20 drafts easily. Maybe minor changes later on, maybe not as many. But yeah, I remember distinctly 1 year of scripting. We were narrating it to some people and we got some feedback. In fact, one feedback we got from Javed Saab, and I realized it's just not working. And that was already 1 year's, 10 months, or almost a year's work into the project. And I just knew that I hadn't cracked the structure and it was not holding together. And I went back to the drawing board and I rewrote the story. I had to rewrite the initial misconception that I had, that I have a ready story. I just have to do a screenplay on this. And that was my inexperience and my lack of understanding back then. So I knew I would never again do an adaptation without rewriting the story for the film once, starting from that. You can't take a book story and start writing scenes or a step outline. You have to go and articulate what is the film story, which is a version and interpretation of the book. So these were important lessons that I had learned. And I went back to the drawing board. I fell back onto what I was taught in my course in terms of structure, in terms of emotional journey. More than structure, emotional journey of the protagonist. Both Rock On and Kai Poche have multiple protagonists. They are the tales of friendship. But what is inherently different between the two is that Rock On has one exterior goal of the band reuniting. It's a common goal that all my 4 characters need to arrive at or not arrive at, right? The goal is one. In Kai Poche, the goals are different. All 3 characters want different things and are motivated by different things. So then the very nature of content was making it a nightmare structurally. So if you understand, instead of converging on a common goal, like you say you have Lagan and you have so many characters, but there'll be 11 players, but all of them need to win one match. But if 11 players had different matches to win, or somebody had to win a girl, somebody had to pay the tax, somebody had to teach cricket, then you don't know how to manage this story material, because it feels like it's diverging, and screenplays and classical narratives usually operate on a principle of convergence, right? So this was the main challenge with Kaipoje, which once I started working, I realized that this is what the problem is. I have characters with divergent goals. It is not feeling cohesive. It is feeling like, oh, the screenplay is falling apart, but the screenplay is falling apart because my characters want different things and the story, nature of the story is such. So then again, a reinvestigation of broadline thematics. What is the story really about? And can I map the emotional journey and structure it according to the emotional journey of the friendship, not just any one character? You know, in a classical tale, you follow a hero, you follow the hero's fortunes or misfortunes, and you get your plot. But here, I think it came down to tracking the fortunes of the friendship per se. Also of the friends, but you know, what are these three guys together at is their relationship, and what is happening to their relationship in relation to the external events.
Yeah, and talking to a writer like you, a good writer like you, even the viewers would get that writing is not such an easy process, and it is very painstaking, and anyone can hardly
Anybody who
imagine.
sits down to write knows that writing is not easy. Even somebody sitting down to write a love letter knows writing is not easy.
But the viewers ke liye, that's why I'm talking to you, and Cinema Satsang is talking to you, because these two are very well written, tightly woven scripts. Although we are a very small
Right.
thing, but we are very choosy in that way that is something to learn from these films and these scripts. एंड कोई रॉक ऑन का कोई सोचेगा भी नहीं कि इतना रिसर्च जा सकता है एक हिंदी फिल्म को लिखने के लिए. तो इसीलिए ये दो फिल्म बहुत ही कमाल की है, और वेरी इंटरेस्टिंग इंसाइट्स यू गेव अस इनटू काइपोचे, एंड ऑफ कोर्स वेरी क्लासिकली रिटन स्क्रीन प्लेज, एंड द एक्ट वन, द सेटअप इज फैंटास्टिक इन बोथ द फिल्म्स, and the ending जो आपने चेंज किया, that is really remarkable. That is given a film a completely different.
It was Gattu's idea. That was Gattu first. The director first suggested it. What if Omi ends up killing Ishan? So, and that's how writer, coming back to your writer-director collaboration. So sometimes a director can have an idea and it sounds like a good idea, but to make that work, the journey that you need to plot to come to that end, that even the director is not prepared for, maybe. Right?
डायरेक्टर्स के पास बहुत आइडिया है, बहुत आइडियाज तो होते हैं डायरेक्टर के पास. उसको एग्जीक्यूट कोई करने के लिए कोई अच्छा राइटर चाहिए.
And then you get surprised that how much more complex your story has become, because you came up with that one idea, and therefore now everything else about the friendship and everything is becoming much more nuanced, because we have to go to that ending, right?
And it's a brave story. It's a brave story, I would say. जो भी बोले कि it's a brave story, और वो जो चीज उसमें बुक में था कि नहीं, I don't know, जो दिखाया है वो आजकल बहुत prominent, this divide, Hindu-Muslim thing. It's very palpable now.
Entertaining popular elements, but it also had something deeper to communicate also, and that comes from the novel. Undoubtedly, those themes also are absolutely there in the novel.
And when you talk about Kaipoche, we have to, I don't know, I have to talk about Sushant, because I haven't spoken about him. I got a chance to talk about him with you. I don't know whether you want to talk about him, but when you see him on the screen and the way he is introduced, the back shot, and then his smile and his entire screen presence, and and of course the performance also, the angsty performance, that he has not been selected for the higher levels, and then when this boy is not responding to his training, so that angst also, he has performed well also.
Yes, Sushant, I mean, not that I knew him well at all, because my work finishes by the time really actors come on board, and I wasn't present for Kaipoche's shooting at all. So I can't really draw upon any personal anecdotes, really, because I had very limited interactions with him. I can only say that for a writer like me who wasn't part of the production at all, it's like what you've imagined and how the actor has interpreted it. And I have to say, Sushant seems very much or like an instinctive actor. He made Ishan. He also interpreted Ishan. So he has his own physicality, right? And yes, the character is an athletic character. So there is that physical part of him. The little hustler, the little man boy, mischievous man boy, these things, I think Abhishek, the director, also has a particular fascination towards, I think, the man boy character archetype. He really loves doing that. And I think Sushant brought it to life really well, and being demanding from his sister, being demanding from his friends, being demanding from his student. You also need a certain kind of, innocence to be that demanding so openly. But yeah, at the same time, his friend calls it out also and says, hey, you just think about yourself. You're so self-obsessed about whatever you want, even if it is for the good of others. But whatever you want, you will just make that happen. Yeah, certainly Sushant brings Ishan to life. I would say all three actors, it was a debut film for Sushant, certainly an early film for Rajkumar, and Amit also, I believe it was his debut, if I'm not mistaken. So these three young actors really worked together, really embraced the characters and brings out the camaraderie, which you can see in all of their performances, even for a song sequence like Meeti Bolia. I love that song and that sequence. And yes, we were writing the scenes even for the songs and the jumping of the rampart and all of that. But finally, the way actors enact it, actually, that is, I would say, partly their interpretation, partly the directorial, cues. Yeah, it's a pleasure to watch when actors deliver on what you had in your mind and that tried writing in your paper. Yeah. So yeah, Sushant certainly stood out, and all three of them, I think, did a very good job. But ये cricketer का role भी Sushant का थोड़ा शायद हो गया. That's why later he also went on to do Dhoni. So yeah.
Tichore was another sports film and another philosophical film.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not getting into that. Putting Sushant and Asif Basra in the same frame was really surreal and
Right. Yes, it's been really unfortunate, and last year has been so tough for many levels for so many of us all across the globe. In fact, it's just been a very dark, gloomy time, and particularly to see two actors from our film, to lose them has been, even if you don't know them that well personally, but just the freakish coincidence of that is really upsetting. Yeah, and both of them were very talented actors, and they are gone too soon, surely.
This film, I wanted to ask you, has a very epic feel. As you said, there's so much of masala. ये फिल्म अगर 20 साल बाद हम देखेंगे, अगर अभी तो relatively modern history है, last 20 years का इसमें history है. If we watch it after 20 years, it has that feel. It will last and it will give us kind of a epic kind of a feel, watching history. Like 50, let's say 2050 में कोई film देखेगा तो it may give an epic feel.
Yeah, now that you say it like that, yes, it does capture. It starts from, the events in the story are early 2000, right? The earthquake and the Gujarat riots, that's 2002. And it's a fin de siècle moment. It's the transition of one century to another. And of course, when you were writing it, you may not have been that aware of it, but from the story world, we are now 20 years ahead. And yes, that's why you work in films or you do anything artistic, so that the work survives much beyond your own span of work or even your span of life, right? So yes, it will be certainly a blessing if Kai Poche speaks to audiences even further down. And many years later, when it
has an epic feel, including the Kolkata Test match.
Right.
India won. And
and Harbhajan's hat trick and all of that. And yeah, for a country full of cricket fans, yeah, of course, our youngsters today may not remember that match, but they might know of it. Yeah, yes. So it does document some momentous incidents and events happening in the real world for that era. See, actually, the job of a writer is to talk about what we don't talk about, right? But within a popular film industry, there is always a certain pressure and requirement to be relatable, to be accessible. People should have a good time. People in India consider films more as entertainment, perhaps, than as art form, right? And it's the both are true, and both things need to happen. But yeah, when I was joking when I said that who wants to talk about unpopular things, but it is our job as creative artists to talk about disturbing things. It doesn't make sense. Stories only exist when there is a disruption. When everything is perfect, there is no story, right? And I think Kai Poche also in its way does that. It holds a mirror to contemporary society. It shows the changing ethos of a certain local community. And it almost foreshadows in a way things to come. While documenting what had already happened, as we stand today in 2021, I think it has also the story per se foreshadows the nature of conflicts that this country will go on to witness subsequently and what we are in the midst of now.
So you're very qualified and you're very good at your job. So I'm hopeful that you will continue write very, very good films, and that will be very good for the Hindi film industry also, to have such talented and qualified writers and write their scripts instead of just mindless. मसाला के साथ उसमें थोड़ा सा आर्ट, थोड़ा सा क्राफ्ट भी आ जाए तो वो फिल्म long lasting ho jayega. And I'm you're one of those rare talented breed of writers in working in the Hindi film industry. And so we are so honored to have you and listen to you, and yes, hope for the best, and thank you so much for your time and talking.
Thanks so much for having me, Kabir. It has been a pleasure talking to you.
हाय, मैं हूं गुलशन देवैया और आप मुझे देख रहे हैं ऑन सिनेमा सत्संग. फॉर मोर सच वीडियोस प्लीज लाइक, शेयर एंड सब्सक्राइब. सिनेमा सत्संग.